It's YouTube Wednesday!
All right, so this is going to be almost entirely voiceover. I think it is entirely voiceover. I'm sorry about that, but this is a faster way for us to go. So last week we did the pumpkin with upholstery foam. This is EVA foam. It's kind of the same circle pattern. All I did was I looked up sphere pattern, and then I put in the computer because I knew the circumference that I wanted. Well, I knew the radius that I wanted, or diameter. I knew one of those. And there's calculators. So if you want a 14-inch ball, you put it in and it tells you what the other parts have to be. And so that's how big you make your sphere. So I happened to laser cut some of these pieces. They can all be cut by hand. I actually end up cutting a lot by hand. And I'm just because I know I'm going to end up using almost all those pieces. I just kind of picked some ones that I like. So that's why I'm pre-contact cementing all of it. And here I am. I'm making some strips. I know I want these strips. This is just one of my favorite techniques, is using a yardstick. I use yardsticks all the time.
I can't believe you're making me do this. Do what? Strip on camera.
I had to get a joke in there. Rob was just as confused as you guys were when I stopped, by the way. But the strips are just super useful. I try to throw them in a box. And here's a circle. I needed a circle, so I'm cutting it. Just using the lid as a form. And that's a nice, pretty round circle. I got some flack a few years back for throwing away razor blades when they got dull, and foam dulls them like crazy. And so I got that sharpener, and it's in my Amazon store if you guys are interested in it, and it does a great job of sharpening box cutters. And that's a ceramic knife. It's one of my favorite tools for EVA foam. I love it. I'm just cleaning up all these strips. And now once again, I'm going to go ahead and contact cement them. I don't play with it and figure out where it goes. No, I'm contacting cementing everything because I'm going to use it eventually, and it needs to be contact cemented, and I might as well get it done at this stage. So putting that sphere together, you saw me contact cement that sphere there. We lost some of that footage of putting it together. Here I am contact cementing it, and I don't use my foam oven. I don't use that. I use just the heat gun, and I heat up all those pieces, and I run them edge to edge. We did have some corrupted footage, unfortunately, so there's going to be a place where you have to use your imagination. But that's exactly how it's done. Every connection gets put together just like that, all the way around. This uses 5 pieces to make a whole sphere, which is kind of nice. And I can't tell you how cool the calculator is for I put in parts of a circle calculator. Dang it, Robert. Well, anyway. So the frames missing was just finishing gluing that together. You guys know how that works. So I'm cutting out a hole for your head is what I'm doing. You know, that's a necessary part.
It's YouTube Wednesday!
Pause. So, yeah, you have to put your head inside of it somehow. That's the best way. And here I'm getting that. I'm cutting that flat, because if you just cut it at an angle, it's not going to be flat. And I know I want it to connect up to a shoulder piece eventually. And now I want to connect this to the bottom of that, where that flat is I just cut. So on that strip, I made sure I did all the edges with contact cement. And I'm speeding it up with the heat gun. I'm also using this strip to cover all of my connections. So it goes over those connections and it kind of just helps seal them up. You know, it's one more thing bridging the gap and increases the surface area of the glue. Now, that sphere isn't perfect, but honestly, as it sits and I can heat gun it, and then it gets rounder and rounder as the stresses even out on it. You can see it's almost a pentagon right there. And this is the bonus of doing all those ahead of time. I just picked it up and I put it on. And now these guys are ready to glue down. Yeah, so I could have made that head hole bigger, but this is just a display piece. So I don't necessarily need it to fit exactly. Now, I saw how that was cut out a little bit wrong, and I'm going to make a hinge out of that. I thought that looked really nice. I thought, well, that could work to my advantage. So you'll see what I do with that later. I turn that into a hinge piece. And these are cool because you can put a light inside of them. We might light up a few. We're doing an area of old diving suits right before, to introduce into the beginning area of our Sea Hag Witch. We're really ramping up her area this year because it was kind of lackluster. Every rough corner, every cut corner needs to be dremeled a little bit. It's amazing what a difference that makes in the look of things. And I'm actually putting this grate on the inside. So I beveled that interior, and I'm going to bevel the outside, the corner of this one. So when it goes in, it sits flusher, more flush. And you can look at that, and that is the piece that I cut off, and the piece that was misdone, and that makes a nice little hinge if you put them together. I'm sanding that ring. Everything gets contact cement. I know it's going to need it eventually. If I want to stick something to it, it's easier to just throw the contact cement on everything. So these little nuts, little bolt heads, again, while they were already in the sheet. These are really easy to cut squares. You cut the corners off the squares, you have little octagons. So they're super easy to cut by hand. And then I think they were too tall, so I'm just trimming them down with a razor knife so they look more realistic. That's my face, yo. Gotta trim my nuts there. And here I'm using the Dremel to make a round hole. I'm using the end of the sanding bit to mark it so it looks clean. And then I can take out the rest with a razor knife. I could use a stepper bit drill, that's fine, but this is an easy way to do it too. So that tubing right there, some of my favorite stuff. That is, it's meant to hide wires, to hold wires together. They sell it at Harbor Freight. It's awesome. I guess I needed another circle. This was shot like 2 weeks ago, so it's kind of weird. You can see that hinge I was talking about. It's kind of weird to be doing the voiceover for it now. We have a different system working with so many people are helping me on YouTube Wednesdays. Oh, so this is the collar. This is the part that goes on the chest, you know. And I am covering the whole thing in contact cement because I got to glue stuff onto it eventually. So I might as well be ready for that. And this is going to glue up under the helmet and go over the person's torso. And these are the strips that will go around it and just make it look better. And I'm cutting my tubing ahead of time so that I know, to make sure I have enough. At that point in time, I didn't have a lot more of that, so I wanted to just make sure. There's always people moving around in the back of the shop. I don't mind that. I think we are we're a live place. You know, a lot of stuff is happening. Just taking the corners off of that, just make it look a little better when it lays down. And now I'm taking the helmet, and if I recall, I didn't line this up correctly, and it looked off, and I didn't like it. So I ended up doing this twice. And if you don't press down too hard, the contact cement is kind of forgiving. And here I'm heating it up to soften that contact cement. There we go. And now I have that plate that I'm just going to push it down while it's warm. I'm going to use these bags of clay as weights to hold it in the shape that I want. And that's where I discover I don't like how wide the shoulders are. I'm going to trim those. You see me trimming them with scissors. This is all by eye. Like, I'm not following any kind of a pattern. I just cut out parts I thought I would want to use or see on it. I have a whole Pinterest board of old diving helmets, and I just picked out some features that I liked. And now, while these are warm, I'm able to turn them around the corners. I don't have to cut all those angles because they're warm enough. I can just bend them, put them on like that. And I'm meeting them up right there in the front because I know I can put a nut or something there, or a buckle, something. And having two layers like that on that curve is just going to reinforce that curve. Don't do that flat and then put it and then curve it. Put it in the curve and then put them together. That's almost always, because it's reinforced by those couple of pieces. And here I didn't put the cut right on that corner. I put it on the flat. Works out better that way. Again, some fake nuts, some bolts. And this is I'm going to connect tubing from the helmet to the chest piece. Now, what function would that serve? It just looks cool. There's no reason for the tubes to go into his chest, but it looks neat, so I'm going to do that. And I'm trying to figure out exactly where those go, but it's going to be where those little nuts I put down are. And I like to make little circular pieces with a small hole that looks like a socket for the hose, but I didn't make any for this. I'll cut them on the laser, or I'll cut them by hand. But just having the nut and then putting my soldering iron through it allows me to run the hose in the same way. And everything is thinking ahead. If I think ahead and I'm able to contact cement everything while I'm waiting on something else, then it speeds up that whole process. I don't want to have to stop and contact cement something and wait on it to dry. I'm contact cementing the things that I need 2 steps from now. I decided to put hoses on the back. I don't need hoses on the back. I just did it. Even aesthetically, I don't know that you'll even see them the way this is going to be displayed. But I guess I'll know they're there. And then I just didn't like the way that they looked loose. So I made a little piece. I fabricated a small piece. It's one of those nuts, again, that I cut. I cut it in half, and now I can glue it on over those like a little bracket with a zip tie underneath holding it. And again, see how tall those nuts are, how much they stand out, because they're made of the same thickness foam as everything else, but they shouldn't be that thick, so that's why I'm cutting them down. These are just some EVA foam buckles that I'm making. That little cut allows them to glue together, you know, kind of kinked up, and allow that pass through right there. I think those look really good. I should have done them for the front, but I didn't. So there we are. And now I'm cleaning up that's the edge, just to make sure that that edge looks nice. It's a huge difference when you hit that with the Dremel. Leak seal. That's some of my favorite stuff. Really good on EVA foam. All of this EVA foam has been covered in contact cement as a sealer. Yes, it's also what I use to put it together, but it's also a nice sealer. So this is over top of that, and it's a nice rubber coating. And then I'm giving it a hammered finish paint job. Paint job's a lot of stages. You guys are painters, you play with it, you know. I wanted to go like hardcore gold, but I didn't have hardcore gold, so I have this copper. I'm going to play with the copper. I have to do some more of these. It won't be just one thing, but I'm really using my experience for making apocalypse masks, or containment masks I called them. And so I'm doing these hoses now, and you have to kind of prime them in black. And once they are primed in black, then I can dry brush them with a silver. I'm just testing some green, and I'm misting a bit of green over it to knock that shininess down. Yeah, so here's me doing those hoses in silver. That just looks nice. That always looks like steel hose to me. And I'm painting inside of these windows. I didn't cut them out, but I painted them with the silver. And I'll go in through with a little bit more aging, and that'll look like a glass window. Ish, you know, a little bit. This is just black acrylic paint and water. It's one of my tricks when I'm almost out of paint, is to suck it up in the bottle and then shoot it back out. A little brown, a little black, mostly water. And I'm just giving it a distressing. This is one of my, you know, they say like steampunk and diesel punk. It's a good diesel punk look to have all this like oily residue on stuff. And I think you might want that on your metal scuba gear to keep it from rusting. The salt water is a harsh mistress. So this is an antique technique. Antique tends to make things look wet. Dry brush tends to make things look dry. So here I am antiquing the snot out of this with this real liquidy paint. And this is just acrylic, so it's not going to interact. It's not going to react with the alcohol-based spray paint underneath. And see what that does immediately. Just knocks it back, adds a layer of grime on there and some age. And this has a coppery brass look to it, so I'm going to go in with some patina also. But putting that on really wet and allowing it to leave those moisture marks as you rag it up is pretty wonderful. I think it's a great aging technique for almost anything, but it does work really well on fake metal and to make it look greasy and oily. And this is, I'm just misting on, this is like a teal color in order to get some of that patina. You know, not too much. I tend to overdo patinas. What do you do? If you like that Stilpy Studio shirt that I'm wearing, you can get a new clean one from our merch store on the video description. And here's where I'm applying. This is now acrylic paint that I've mixed. Or no, you know what? It's spray paint. I painted it on the table and mixed it up that way. So, and I'm hitting all those edges because they're going to have patina in them. That's where it's going to patina first. So, I'm just hitting that. And it's so easy to overdo it. Try not to overdo it. I tend to fail at that sometimes. And now I just don't want that gray foam up underneath, so I'm spraying that black. I think it's black, might be dark green.
Go make
that
stuff.
Looks like a scuba helmet, doesn't it? I'm happy with it. I've got 5 or 6 more to make. I'm gonna have the actors come out and help.
Go make stuff.
Okay, bye.
Go make stuff.